Well, hi there, everybody. This is Mike Walsh, the president for the California School Boards Association. And we're here to give you a little brief update on the governor's conference from today of his press budget for 2018-19. There's some good news, and then there's some work that we still feel really important needs to be done. So the good news starting with that is that we appreciate that the governor decided to fully fund the local control funding formula. And he's done it 2 years early. So that's a fantastic thing. We appreciate that. There's another round of one-time monies, which is equal about $300 per student. Thank you for that. There's a cost of living adjustment, which is about 2.5%. And it's for special ed and other programs outside of the LCFF. Also, there's, consider how the LCFF was rolled out. There was phase 1, which was about funding, phase 2, which was about the dashboard and accountability. Well, phase 3 is they've decided that there should be money set aside for county offices of education to assist districts as they implement their plans. So we think that's fantastic that there's some more one-time monies for county offices to increase because the amount of work that they're doing has certainly increased. Now, we're still working on this notion of what full and fair funding actually is, as even with all this good news, we are still ranked in the lower 40 percentiles for whether you're talking about per pupil funding, where we're still 41. If you're talking about pupil teacher ratios, we're still 45. And if you're talking about pupil to staff ratios, nurses, counselors, teachers, instructional aides, well, yes, we're still 48th in that. So we see a lot of work that still needs to be done out there, and we are excited about working with our stakeholders, working with the legislature, and really helping them understand this notion of how critical it is that we fight for what should be known as full and fair funding based on our needs. So we are excited because we have Ledge Action Day, where we're looking forward to working with so many of you as we speak to the legislature and really help them understand in full force how many of us are excited about the work and that we're looking forward to that. So Ledge Action Day is happening in March. Stay tuned for that. And also know that at that time we're going to help them understand we still need relief from the pension costs that we're going to, here we are for many districts, the pension costs are tripling in terms of what they're expending. So we think it's going to be exciting to do our work, and that we're thankful where we are now, and we realize that there's so much more to be done. So this is Mike Walsh, and really, it looks like we have a couple questions. So how close does complete implementation of LCFS get us to full and fair funding? Which is a great question. It doesn't get us close. Okay? Really, it just gets us to where we already know we are. It keeps us from going backwards. And that's a great start, but it is not where we want to be. We want to move to the national average. You know, the national average allows us to do a lot of other things. The national average really allows us to move up in terms of being able to provide resources. So, then once we're at that national average, then let's see what it takes to get us to the top 10 in the nation. You really think about it, there was a time when the funding and our scores and our results were really high in the nation, high amongst the nation, and when the funding was pulled, then suddenly our scores were also going in the wrong direction as well. So we would love to figure that one out. So another question, how does today's funding compare to pre-recession levels? That's a great question. And what it does is today's funding just puts us right back at pre-recession. Right? And so again, it stopped us from going backwards. The governor has fully done what he set out to do. And now our goal is to help the legislature understand what there is still needing to be done. So we want to start talking to the legislature about the needs, not just funding, but the needs for the work that we are being asked to do when you consider what it means to do 21st century learning and to prepare students for 21st century education, 21st century jobs. That's going to require a lot of infrastructure on our part that we need to have help with. That is a funding conversation. So another question that we have, what impacts our health care and pension, transportation benefits to the cost, what are they having? You know, and that's a great conversation because a lot of the funding that we talked about today, that falls outside of the LCFF and the funding. So all we received today from the governor was full implementation of those things that are contained within the LCFF, which is really focuses around how do we help our students who are living in poverty, how do we help English language learners, what do we do for our students who are foster youth. That's really the funding, that's the focus of the LCFF. That does not account for, again, the work that needs to be done on pension. Right? We go from roughly $500 a student for pension costs, and now all of a sudden our pension costs are nearly triple, around nearly $1,500 per student. So we require help with that, and again, that's part of the work that we get to do in the future. Next question is, what is the relationship between funding and equity? I think when you look back on when our funding was high and our results were high, I think there's a great correlation between the proper funding being placed in those areas where the schools need it. You know, the wonderful thing about, as we all know, that the wonderful thing about the LCFF is it just is drawing attention to those areas that need it the most. The other thing that we know is that the funding base is too small. So I think there's a wonderful relationship between funding and equity, especially when we have the right money to drive in the right areas, so that at local school districts you can make the right decisions about how do you meet those needs of those students. So that's some of that. We have another question coming in right now. What about CSBA's recent resolution on funding? And that's, you know, where we are calling on the legislature to do funding, to create funding mechanisms that at least get us to the national average. You know, that is again part of the conversation that we get to have with the legislature and make our case during Ledge Action Day. We get to make our case throughout the year as well, but primarily around Ledge Action Day or anytime that you get an opportunity to go and talk to your local legislature. And it's also something that I highly encourage all districts to sign that resolution and get that turned in, because wouldn't it be neat to wander into the office, into the Capitol with us in March with a stack of those resolutions, the statement that makes, that we all understand the critical importance that money plays and the funding that it plays in us being able to meet the needs of those students. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we can't do it without the resources. And in a lot of cases, the resources is human labor, right? How do we get enough teachers? Just to be at the national average, we'd need to be able to hire another 135,000 teachers. You know, imagine what could be done at a district if you had enough funding to help out with more nurses, more counselors. There's a lot of opportunity there. So that's kind of what we need to make sure that the stakeholders, we need to make sure that the legislature, we need to make sure that the community at large, they understand that notion, because we do know that the public wants to see us do well with the students that we serve. So, all right, well, that's it for today. Thank you for being a part of this conversation with us. We thank you for all the work that you're doing. We look forward to seeing all of you really in March for Ledge Action Day as we really make our needs known to the legislature and everyone else. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.